Hello, very good evening. In previous classes, we've been talking about PHP, what PHP is, how we use it, the server-side aspect of PHP, how to install a WAMP server, how to use a WAMP server, and then we did a small basic program of PHPs as well. So let's begin and continue. Today, we will be discussing about conditional operators within PHP, which basically are if and else statements. If and else statements is something that mostly people are already aware of if you are coming from JavaScript or Java or C++. However, we will talk about it very briefly in this lecture as well. My name is Dr. Shan Bhatti. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe the channel so that you receive the regular updates and video lectures regularly. Let's begin. Now, PHP, we again write within our HTML code, or we can write PHP separately as well. In this case, we write within our HTML body and \HTML. Within my head tag, I just give a head tag, and we can specify some title inside it as well. But for now, we just leave it blank. And we have a body tag and then \body. Okay, so this is a typical HTML. Again, PHP can be written in a separate external file. PHP can be embedded within our body tags, and you can write as many PHP syntax as you write. In previous class, we discussed that in order to write PHP, we write this code simply \?. So this tag marks the start of a PHP code, and then this tag marks the end of a PHP code. This is somewhat different from other PHP codes or other HTML tags, sorry, as we have discussed in previous classes. Okay, so whenever we or wherever we need to write PHP, we just have to tell our system that bracket start $PHP and then bracket question mark. This indicates that the PHP code starts here and ends here, and whatever we write in between these two tags becomes a PHP statement. Then we go and we save the code. So in order to save it, remember we talked that you need to install a XAMPP server, or at least I'm using a XAMPP server. Within the XAMPP server, there is htdocs statements, and within the doc we created a folder called PHP class. Okay, so whatever project you're working in, we create a folder by that name and we install and save all the files in this one. In our case, we just created this file here, and I will use conditions.html. Now I can save it as HTML, but because it contains a PHP file, it is recommended that we save it as PHP so that our servers read this PHP file and process it accordingly. Okay, so all PHP files basically save it as PHP. It can contain a standard HTML, or it might not contain HTML depending on how you work with it. We will be doing more exercises later on so you understand it. So once we save it, now this is our PHP file basically that has been created. Within this PHP file, we have our standard piece of code. One small mistake, question mark and \. I think this is okay, right? So kindly correct this, my mistake, question mark and then \. Okay. Close bracket. So this is the correct syntax of our code. Now inside this, let's create a variable. Now we discussed that we can create variable, for example, marks is equals to 40 semicolon. Okay, so this basically defines the variable name and variable value. Now conditional statements, we start with if else. Okay, so if is basically a conditional statement that defines a certain condition. Based on this condition, certain statements are executed. So in our case, we can say $marks is equal to, for example, 40. Okay, so now here we have used something called a relational operator. Relational operator basically allows us to check a relation between a variable and a value, or between two variables, or between two operands, whatever you want to do. Okay, so in this case we used an equal to operator. Equal to basically means evaluate a condition where both values are exactly same. If this condition becomes true, if this is the true case, then basically we use a statement called, for example, echo, and we can use yes, the values are equal, I guess, semicolon. Okay, so now what we did, we created a simple PHP where we had a marks variable. We checked a condition, if marks is equals to 40, echo the marks. Okay, and what happens if the condition is false? What happens if marks is not true? So we write something called else. Else echo question brackets, no, the values are not equal. Okay, semicolon. So if else statements are known as conditional statements. They are used to evaluate certain conditions. If a condition becomes true, this is known as a condition. Okay, this is typically, the whole expression is known as a condition. Condition basically resides where, or is used based on a relational operators. We have talked about relation operators a lot in previous classes as well. Simply speaking, this is called equal to sign. I will explain a few others in a second. So we save it. In order to execute this code, we need to have a server running. Now, I talked about that you can go inside your browser, and wherever you have installed a server, for example, XAMPP folder, go inside it, you would find XAMPP start, XAMPP stop, and control panel. You can access the control panel from your start menu as well, or if you have created a shortcut, you can access it from here as well. You can start a control panel and launch it, or sometimes what we do is we just go inside this folder, right click, create a desktop shortcut for it, create a desktop shortcut. So once we are on our desktop, we have a XAMPP start icon, just double click on it. What this will do, it will start the XAMPP server automatically. It will also start the Apache server, the PHP and MySQL server as well. So once if you start the server, it basically goes into the system, it ensures everything is okay, and hopefully it will start the server momentarily. So now you see that it basically starts this Apache server, MySQL, and everything is basically running. Now it also mentions here that in order to close the server, do not use Control-C. Instead, go into your system folder or XAMPP folder and use something called XAMPP stop.exe, because it will clean up the transactions and everything very nicely. Okay, so in order to stop the server, we will just use this exe and it will stop the entire server. Okay, so now we have our control panel running, Apache server is automatically running, MySQL server also working fine. Now, if we go on to our browser, on our browser, basically we need to write a URL such as for a local host host, local host, and if so, what happened? Local host host, and we press enter and we get our web server running. Okay, so if you don't see this page, make sure you have typed in localhost correctly. It doesn't matter if you're connected with internet or not, this is running from your local host, and whatever you're seeing here is basically your dashboard of your PHP XAMPP Apache server. Okay, from here we can access few of the applications or my admin panel of a PHP MySQL. Anyway, so once you are here, basically now what we need to do is we need to write local host host / and excuse me, we have a folder called PHP class, CLASS class / now we write the folder name because we have files inside the folder name. If you don't want to write in the folder name, just don't create a folder and save the files on the root. But as I said, it's not recommended at this level. We just save it here and then we work with that. Now we have a file called, what was my file name? Sorry, I forgot the file name. Meanwhile, file name is called conditions.php. So I write conditions.php, enter. And yes, the values are equal. Okay, so we get the output instantaneously. Now what happened, as soon as we enter the URL, the system or the browser sent the data to the server processed the request and sent the answer back. Okay, so request was sent, server processed the request, and a response was generated. This is how basically our PHP systems are working. So if I come back into my code, so request was sent, PHP executed, and this is basically a response that was generated on the browser. So this is a simple if-else statements that we execute. Okay, similarly you can use multiple if-else as well. So for example, we have if and a certain conditions. We can use a condition, for example, marks is greater than for example 40. Okay, and if such is the case, echo bracket start bracket close semicolon pass, I guess. Okay, pass, or we can write a statement, you got pass marks. Okay, and obviously we can write this within our BR tags. If you want, you can write this within your paragraph tags. You can specify style as well, but if you do, again, use the single quotations, because this would now become string within a string and it will create problems. So we talked about this in previous class. Because this is a string and we need a string within it, so just use the single quotations, that should do the trick. So we can use color colon, for example, blue, and semicolon, and for example font dash size colon, for example 50, and that should give us the values. Okay, control S, in fact \p. Okay, so this is one if, but what if this if becomes false? So what we do is we come here and we write else, and then we give another if. Okay, so in one case, if this if becomes false, so this is a relational operator called greater than. If this statement becomes false, then what happens? So we go into else. So inside this else, again we can write if else. So this is called nested if else. In this if, we write again $marks is less than 40. of less than 50. So now means that if your marks are greater than 40, condition is true. If your marks are, for example, less than 40, let's do that. If the marks are less than 40, then what we should do, we just copy this statement, you come here, we paste it, and we can write in this red color that you fail. Okay, fail, fail. Save it. So now what happens that if you come here, if this statement is true, marks are 40, if marks is equal to 40, this gets executed. If it's not 40, this gets executed else. In this case, we use the condition same, marks is greater than 40. If marks is greater than 40, this condition gets executed. If else, if marks is less than 40, this gets executed. So we basically evaluate various different conditions using if statements. Within if, we provide a condition. The condition is based on greater than, less than sign, equal to, not equal to, greater than equal to, or less than equal to. These are various different values which we can use to evaluate different conditions. Okay. If I can just copy and paste this. Okay, so now in order to run this, let's go back into our browser and again hit a refresh. Didn't we save it? Let's just come here, make sure we save the statements. So here basically we are trying to say that if marks are greater than 40, do the statement. If marks are less than 40, do the statement. We come here, we hit a refresh, nothing is happening because marks are 40. So let me just make it, for example, 45. Control S, come back here, hit a refresh, you got pass marks. Okay, now every time you come here, you do need to put a refresh, because every time we refresh, the request is again sent to the server, it processes it and then sends a response back. Okay, so we are getting we are contacting server. This response is coming from a server, not on your browser. Browser is just displaying the content. In HTML, CSS, JavaScript, browser is everything, but in PHP, now server is also involved. So every time you hit a refresh, data is sent to the server, server processes it, sends it back to the response, to the browser. Okay, so this response is generated from the server. So if I come back here, we have you got pause. So for example, if I just gave it a 5 value, Control S, hit a refresh, you got fail marks. Okay, so this is what we call if, else, if statement. So we can have even further more. So what if this if also becomes false? So I can write further else here as well, and sorry, I can give echo and I can say whatever statements I want, or for example in this case invalid values. Okay, and let's just change the color to, for example, green. Control S, come back here, hit a refresh, this is all okay. But for example, if it's like 0, Control S, I think in this case again it will be less than 40. But what if it is exactly 40? Control S, if I come here again, sorry, and if I come here quickly, hit a refresh, invalid values. Okay, because it's 40, this gets executed, so we get yes, the values are equal. This first if gets executed. The next time, if marks are greater than 40, this condition gets, but marks because are 40, this condition becomes false, because greater than means greater than 40, not equal to. Then if, because this if is false, else, and this if gets executed. Once it comes to this if, it again checks, are the marks less than 40, again not equal to, less than 40. In both condition it sets greater than or less than, not equal to. So that's why we have equal to separately here. So if both if are false, then what do you do? Then you come here and print invalid values. So you print invalid values here. Okay, so that's what if else statement does. If else are very easy and better mechanism of evaluating expressions within our PHP. Okay.